Right, so this week I had planned on reviewing Jupiter Ascending, but then this happened, so obviously I had to talk about it. I've spoken about Justice League before in another video, and I had wanted to talk about it again, but if I'm being honest, it was overall just too bland and boring to actually make a full review of. But in my reviews, I do like to talk about how to improve bad movies, and now that someone is literally trying to do that with Justice League, I'd like to add my 2 cents on how I think it should be done. To do this, I'll be focusing on 5 particular areas that I think need improvement. 5 things that I felt the first movie got wrong and I hope could be improved in the re-edit. So, without further ado, let's begin. Number 1. Steppenwolf. Right, so I've already spoken about why Steppenwolf is a terrible villain in my How to Write a Supervillain video. Check that out if you haven't already. In that video, I pointed out how Steppenwolf is incredibly boring in terms of personality and motivation and even visual design. He simply isn't threatening enough to carry the movie as a villain because he never has any real moments that hammer in how deadly he is, and overall he feels less like a full-on boss fight and more like the mini-boss at the end of the tutorial level. So, how can we improve this? Well, first things first, if any footage of Darkseid exists, add it in. Even if the whole of Steppenwolf's story sucks, at least the addition of a real big bad could help build up a proper threat. Second, one of Steppenwolf's big problems is that he never has a real conversation with anyone outside of lousy threats and boring speeches. Is there any footage of him actually talking to someone and getting across who he really is and what he's like? What does he want outside of just serving Darkseid? Who is Mother and why does he keep talking about her? Thirdly, if nothing else, he needs to actually come across as threatening. It's not enough for him to merely steal some poorly guarded boxes. He needs to actually annihilate people on screen and establish himself as a terrifying threat that our heroes should fear. Similar to that scene where Thanos more or less destroys the Hulk in Infinity War. Like I say, prove to us that he is a true boss fight in his own right and not merely the mini-boss in the shadow of Darkseid. Number 2. The fight scenes. Now, the fight scenes in this movie are by no means bad. However, if there's anything they're lacking, it's creativity. When you have a group of heroes, all with vastly different powers, then you should have an absolute treasure trove of opportunities here, especially when it comes to how the powers interact. Aside from an occasional moment, we rarely see our heroes truly working together, and some, especially Batman, often feel sidelined. I think a great comparison for how to really make a fight scene using diverse superpowers work would be the Mutants vs Sentinels fights from X-Men Days of Futures Past. Those fight scenes give every mutant the time to shine, show them working as a team to help each other out, and often show their powers effectively being combined, like Blink regularly creating portals for the other's projectiles, or Storm using lightning to detonate a plane being controlled by Magneto. Like, I can't say for certain if footage similar to that exists in Justice League, but if there really is 4 hours worth of it, then surely there's something to be salvaged there. Number 3. The length and pacing. Justice League's predecessor, Batman vs Superman: Dawn of Justice, was widely criticised for being too long and overbloated. I think this may have convinced Warner Brothers that what audiences really wanted was something quick and short. But guess what? That didn't work either. The shorter runtime means we don't spend enough time with our new heroes, and this is a main contributor to the fact that I feel the only characters who actually come across well in the movie are Wonder Woman, who is already a well-established and likeable character thanks to her own movie, and Superman, who I will admit now actually comes across better than before, given he's dropped the unnecessary angst and is now optimistic and likeable. The others, however, rarely get a time to shine, since there just isn't enough footage of them. In some cases, the footage used doesn't even work that well. Aquaman, for example, is introduced in the most boring way possible as a random villager listening to Bruce Wayne before getting into a bit of an argument with him. And yet, later on, there's a much better introductory scene where he rescues a fisherman and then goes straight to the bar to grab some whiskey. This scene is a much, much better introduction to this character, so why not have this be the actual introduction? Cut out the unnecessary faffing about, like arguing over whether or not to form the Justice League or resurrecting Superman, and instead feature more character building moments and more team interactions. You need to sell us on the ensemble that you're presenting. You don't need to focus so much on Bruce Wayne's planning. It just slows down the movie and sucks out the energy. Number 4. Cyborg and the Flash. As I say, failing to get across our new heroes is a big flaw for this movie. This film introduces 3 new characters that we haven't properly encountered in the DC movies before. The first is Aquaman, who, while underused, is generally alright. But then there's Cyborg, the resident angst machine of the group. I'm just going to say this now, Cyborg's introduction kinda makes him a bit unlikable. We see him angry at his father for turning him into a monster, when in reality his father saved him from the brink of death by giving him a cool, super powerful robot body. Like, how on earth are we supposed to feel any sort of malice towards the father here? He saved his son's life and gave him superpowers. As a result, Cyborg kinda comes across as an ungrateful whiner, especially given the film doesn't show anybody reacting particularly badly to him, except maybe for Superman perceiving him as a threat. If you want us to root for this character, either remove the unnecessary angst or actually show how being a robot man has impacted him. Is there any footage that shows people actually treating him like a freak? Is there any footage that legitimately shows the downside of his robot body rather than just presenting it as super cool and powerful? Then there's the Flash, who, I'll just be honest, is kind of annoying. He's become the goofy comic relief of the movie, in a rather transparent attempt to make the movie more lighthearted, possibly to compete with a certain other movie franchise. The problem is his jokes very rarely land and often just come across as awkward. Quite frankly, Wonder Woman's occasional snarkiness is a lot funnier. This sort of humour maybe works in a movie like The Avengers, but it's really not necessary here. The Flash works much better as a fish out of water character. While an occasional joke here and there is fine, I actually don't think this movie needs a comic relief. Let it have its own identity rather than trying and failing to imitate others. Once again, the problem that affects both of them, and Aquaman for that matter, is that the movie's short runtime and focus on the unnecessary means that the 3 of them just aren't given the chance to really grow and shine. Number 5. Finally, we come to the most important point. The one thing the Snyder Cut desperately needs to revive the interest in this franchise. Fun. Above all else, Justice League's main problem is being dull. It's not the most boring superhero movie of all time, but it simply isn't interesting enough to leave audiences hungry for more. The villain is too dull, the fight scenes aren't creative enough, there aren't enough scenes that really explore the characters and their interactions, and all these things combined make for an extremely underwhelming experience. I'm not saying make it exactly like the Avengers and have an upbeat attitude and humour. You can still provide a lot of fun and enjoyment while staying very serious. Just look at Christopher Nolan's Batman. It's just hard to feel any sort of satisfaction when I don't care about the villain and the heroes aren't making a particularly charismatic team dynamic. It's hard to have fun when I don't care about either side and neither side is really giving it their all. I'm not sure exactly how to fix this, given I don't know what's on the cutting room floor, but I'll say this. While this movie is very forgettable outside the particularly bad moments, when it comes to scenes that actually are good, well, here's what I remember. Wonder Woman stopping that art thief in the beginning, Aquaman saving the fisherman, the bit where the Flash nudges the sword while running in super speed, and Lois Lane reuniting with Superman. The first three are actually fun scenes and get across the characters and their powers, and the latter is admittedly quite heartwarming and does show decent chemistry between the two characters. In other words, more of this and less boring exposition and arguing and angst. I'm not sure if this film is fully salvageable. As I've said, I don't know what other footage exists, and I'm not sure if there's merely just enough to patch up some wounds or so much that it could become a completely different movie. But hey, Snyder has a year to work on it, a year to potentially bring back this franchise, much like our heroes resurrected Superman. Or, at the very least, it's enough time to fix that bloody mustache. Thanks for watching the video. What are your thoughts on the Snyder Cut? Do you think it'll give us the Justice League film we've always wanted? Do you think this franchise is beyond saving? Are you just here to say that you think Marvel is better? Whatever your opinion, be sure to let me know down below. Like, share and subscribe and all that jazz, and I hope to talk to you again soon. Goodbye.